Discover the sinister secrets of cursed winter camping. 5 spine-chilling horror tales exposed. As the chill of winter settled in, whispers echoed through the bustling town of Timber Hollow. You're camping in those woods? You're brave, or foolish. Laura, a meticulous 35-year-old mom, simply dreamed of a warm fire, marshmallows, and laughter with her husband Mark and their 2 kids, Emma and Jake. What could go wrong in those snow-covered pines? But the rumors hung heavy in the air, a threat of something sinister lurking beneath the idyllic surface. The car was loaded, the excitement palpable, as they drove away from the chaos of their city life. Winter sunsets painted the sky in hues of pink, a promise of the cozy getaway that awaited them. But as they pulled into the seemingly perfect campsite surrounded by towering trees, the locals peered out from their homes, exchanging looks that sent shivers down Laura's spine. Already a knot formed in her gut, but she turned it into laughter, rallying her family to unpack and set up. As twilight cloaked the campsite, the crackling fire lit the faces of her loved ones, and they settled into a warm routine. Ghost stories danced off their lips, igniting a thrilling fear that had Emma squealing and Jake hiding behind his dad. But even as Laura feigned bravery, shadows flickered just beyond their campfire light. The stories of campers who vanished in these woods crept into her mind, threading through the innocent chirps of the night. With the call of nature echoing through Mark's voice, he strode into the dark to fetch more wood. Minutes passed, each one heavier than the last. Laura tried to shake off her unease, huddling with her kids, but the silence thickened, wrapped around them like a suffocating shroud. "Mark!" Her voice broke through the stillness, but the woods swallowed her words whole. Panic surged, clawing at her throat as she ventured into the gloom, the beam from her flashlight slicing through the fog, illuminating only the looming trees. Something was off. Had he gone too far? What was it the townsfolk murmured about? On her increasingly frantic search, Laura stumbled upon an old ritual site. Bones scattered among the soil like forgotten relics. Her heart raced as a primal fear took hold. She turned back, but the familiar path blurred, twisting into an abyss of despair. "Mommy?" Emma's small voice quivered behind her, making her skin crawl. Where were they? And what lay hidden among the dark? The sound of rustling leaves sent her heart into a frenzied beat, but it was the shadow that finally froze her blood. A figure stepped from the black, moving closer, shrouded in menace. Laura's breath hitched. Was it real or just a nightmare unfolding before her? The stories of disappearances thundering in her head now felt like a prophecy. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As panic clawed at her throat, she pushed the memories of laughter out of her mind, focusing on her children instead. The figure loomed larger. This was no friendly face. This was the harbinger of dread that haunted the townsfolk's whispers. The shadows grew heavier, swallowing her hope, as whispers of a past haunting echoed through the trees. The air turned cold, too cold, making her limbs tremble. Not just the dark trust that kept her paralyzed, but a warning that the gentlest smiles might hide the most dangerous intentions. Laura clenched her fists, fighting the fear that threatened to engulf her as she took a step back. But now there was nowhere to run. With dread pulsating in her veins, she knew one thing. The cozy family moment had been replaced by a chilling reality, and this nightmare was far from over. The figure stepped into the flickering light, and Laura's heart plummeted. She caught a glimpse of a ghastly face, pale and gaunt, eyes like deep voids absorbing all warmth. Panic surged through her, and she turned to run, seeking solace in the grasp of her children. But the darkness twisted around her like a living entity, each step laborious, heavy with dread. "Mommy!" Emma's terrified cry pierced the stillness. Laura spun around to see her daughter trembling, eyes wide with horror. Jake stood frozen beside her, his small hands shaking. "Stay close," she shouted, though her voice wavered. The creature lingered just beyond the firelight, a shadow cloaked in malice. An overwhelming sense of wrongness flooded through her. The air felt charged, weighted, as if the trees were listening, conspiring, watching. Memory after memory of the townsfolk's warnings cascaded through her mind. The disappearances, the whispers, the legends of a dark force that devoured families whole. Just then, the forest erupted in an eerie rustle. Mark. She had to find him. With a frantic glance back at her children, she made a decision. "Stay here. I'll find your dad." "No, Mom, please don't leave us," Emma begged, her small voice cracking. With a final desperate look at them, Laura took off toward the shadows where Mark had disappeared. The flashlight quivered in her hand as she navigated the twisted roots and thick underbrush. Every snapping twig made her flinch. Every gust of wind sent icy gusts down her spine. "Mark!" she shouted into the abyss, her voice swallowed by the oppressive silence. There was no response, just the echo of her own fear. Suddenly, the soft crunch of snow behind her whipped her around. The figure stood at the edge of the fading firelight, closer now, shrouded in an unnatural stillness. It lifted a hand, fingers elongated and crooked like branches, pointing toward her. "Get away! Stay back!" Laura gasped, fear spilling over as adrenaline surged. But the thing didn't move. It just stayed there, watching intently. Her legs propelled her forward, plunging deeper into the darkness, every heartbeat thunderous in her ears. She stumbled over frozen ground, the flashlight's beam flickering against the trees. With a breath held tightly in her chest, she froze at the sight. A swirling mist loomed ahead, and amidst it she caught a glimpse of movement. "Mark!" The name tore from her lips without thought. "No," a voice echoed back, low and rumbling. It was unmistakably Mark's, but layered with something darker, something that chilled her to the very core. "Mark!" She pushed forward, desperation fueling her. The mist grew thicker and crunched beneath her feet. Shadows flitted past, whispering and mocking. The world turned upside down, and the path shifted like a gut-wrenching labyrinth. "Laura." His voice again, more distant now. The plea sent chills ricocheting through her bones. "Where are you?" she cried, reaching into the mist, the cold wrapping around her like chains. Her heart raced, each thump heavy with dread, uncertainty gnawing at her thoughts. She could almost see him. His silhouette emerged just beyond her grasp, then vanished into thin air. "Mommy!" Emma's faint cry pierced through her, ringing with anxiety that intensified the shadows swirling around her. Panic whipped through her as she tore back toward her children. But as she turned, the forest closed in. Darkness fell heavy over her, swallowing her screams. The figure loomed again, edging closer, tendrils creeping along the ground. "Not just the dark," it whispered chillingly, a voice intertwined with the breath of the forest. "They will never leave." As she gasped for breath, the world spun, and the frigid mist wrapped tighter. Did she have the strength to fight what was emerging from the heart of those cursed woods? And what had become of Mark? Before she could piece together her next move, everything went black. What lurked in the depths of the woods was waiting, and it was hungry. Laura's eyes shot open, the darkness still thick around her, swirling with the oppressive weight of dread. Panic beat heavily in her chest as she struggled for breath, the chill of the mist wrapping around her like a vice. It felt as though she was floating, suspended between reality and a nightmare. "Mark!" she screamed, desperation clawing at her throat. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the distant rustle of leaves, the whispers creeping closer. She stumbled forward, feeling the ground shift beneath her feet, the world a terrible distortion of dark and light. Every instinct screamed for her to turn and run. But where? The children. Emma and Jake. "Mommy!" A voice, clearer now, echoed through the trees. "Emma! Jake!" she called out, her voice cracking. The shadows seemed to waver, pulling back for just a heartbeat, revealing glimpses of white, snow, the small contours of her children, moving amid the fog. She fought through the chill, her legs propelling her forward, driven by love and sheer panic. "Stay close," she shouted, her heart racing as she fought against the darkness. Suddenly she felt a tugging beneath her feet. A cold, skeletal hand reached up through the snow, grasping for her ankle. Horror surged through her as she kicked, her foot connecting with something solid but unspeakably wrong. "It's coming for us," Emma cried, her voice pierced with fear, pulling her back to the immediate danger. Laura turned to see the figure close again, closer than before. It was taller, everything about it wrong, a grotesque premonition wrapping its tendrils around her spirit. "Run!" Laura yelled, urgency thrumming in her veins. The children moved in a frenzy, but there was nothing but shadows behind them now, pooling in the shape of the creature, writhing with malicious intent. "Mom!" Jake's voice was terrified, followed by the sound of his small feet tripping over roots. "Keep moving!" she shouted, adrenaline pushing her forward. She could barely see. The flashlight flickered and died, leaving them enveloped in darkness. The whispers intensified, almost laughing now, the very trees seeming to lean in closer, their branches curling like fingers. "Mark, where are you?" Laura yelled again, her voice breaking. A flash of movement caught her eye as a figure broke through the mist. Relief surged through her, but it froze just as quickly when she realized it wasn't Mark. No, it was a twisted version of him. Hollow eyes, a grin that stretched too far, the shadows seeming to emanate from him. "Join us," he rasped, the chill of his voice wrapping around her heart like a serpent. "Stay with me, Laura." She stumbled back, her heart pounding wildly. "No, you're not him." "Oh, but I am." The entity chuckled, an echo of Mark layered within that sent her mind reeling. The forest pulsed with dark energy, twisting and battling for dominance. Laura felt the ground beneath her shifting, a chasm of emptiness threatening to swallow them. Shadows danced on the edges of her vision, flitting in and out like forgotten memories. "Mommy!" Emma begged, clinging to her. The figure raised its hand, tendrils snaking closer, and in that moment time paused. Laura could feel the weight of every moment, every gasp of breath that precipitated their flight. Was this where it ended? Was she too late to save her family? But a sudden sound pulled her from despair, the crack of a branch, the muffled sound of footsteps. Hope flickered within her, drawing her attention away from the horror before her. "Help!" It wasn't just a scream. It was a voice filled with purpose. Laura turned her head sharply in the direction of the sound, her heart leaping. Was it Mark? For the first time since stepping into this nightmare, something renewed ignited within her. "Mark!" she called as she pushed the children behind her protectively. But what if it wasn't Mark? What if it was something worse? The tension thickened, and from the mist emerged another shadow. Was it friend or foe? The truth lay just beyond the veil of terror. The question became, could she summon enough courage to find out? Before she could think, the darkness writhed again, the laughter rising to a crescendo. And as it beckoned, Laura realized one thing. The fight for her family was only just beginning. Laura's breath stilled as she squinted into the fog, desperately searching for that glimmer of hope. The voice had felt so familiar, yet the shadows cocooning her were relentless, clawing at the edges of her sanity. With a heart still racing, she clutched Emma and Jake closer. Both children trembled, their innocence a sweet, vulnerable contrast to the horrors lurking around them. "Mom," Emma whispered, her small face pale in the dim light. It broke Laura's heart hearing the doubt in her daughter's voice. "Don't worry, sweetie. We'll find your dad," Laura promised, injecting strength into her words even as her own resolve began to wane. The world was spiraling darker, suffocating her hope with every passing moment. The mysterious figure emerged from the mist, a silhouette that lingered just beyond the faint glow of her phone's battery. It moved like smoke, reshaping itself as it took more steps forward. It didn't walk like Mark, it slid, an unnatural grace that sent icy chills through Laura's spine. "Laura!" It cooed, each syllable dripping with malice, and for a fleeting moment the voice sounded painfully like Mark's. a twisted reminder of warmth that sent roiling dread straight into her gut. "Daddy!" Jake cried, and before she could stop him, he darted toward the figure, drawn like a moth to flame. "No, Jake! Come back!" Laura's scream ripped through the air as her heart plummeted into despair. Just as fast as he ran, the creature lunged, a grotesque grin splitting its face wide. Shadows erupted from its form, and a sickly, sweet scent washed over Laura. She lunged as well, reaching for Jake, her heart pounding, breath hitching. The darkness was like a living thing spilling its tendrils, trying to ensnare them all. "Hold on to me!" Laura yelled, wrapping her arms around Jake just in time. She stumbled back, taking them both away from the creature's icy grasp, but a shadow gripped around her ankle. The ground beneath their feet felt alive, heaving with the weight of despair. "Mom!" Emma shouted, pure terror vibrating her voice. "Run!" Laura cried, pulling Jake against her side as she focused on fighting through the pushing shadows. Each step felt heavier, the mist swirling thicker with each breath. The forest morphed around them, branches clutching like skeletal hands trying to pull them back into the dark abyss. Whispers swirled, taunting and cruel, echoing her deepest fears. "You can't escape," they hissed, wrapping around her heart, squeezing with a cold, unyielding grip. Suddenly the mist parted, and ahead a flicker of light danced in the distance. A beacon of hope? Or another trick? Laura hesitated for a heartbeat before making the choice, dragging her children toward the light. She could feel it, the pressure of the darkness gathering again. A surge behind them like a pack of predators ready to pounce. "Make it to the light," she urged them, every ounce of courage coursing through her veins. The sinister laughter echoed, playful yet menacing, as the shadows withdrew just for a moment, lured by the light ahead. As they dashed forward, the creature receded into the darkness, but its presence loomed like thunderclouds waiting to unleash chaos. "You can't outrun what's already claimed you," it taunted, its voice trailing off into an eerie silence. Laura glanced back. The whispering shadows were gone, but so was the sense of safety. "Mommy!" Emma's small voice snapped her back to reality. "What if it isn't safe?" Jake whimpered, glancing nervously at the increasing darkness behind them. The light was closer now, pulsing gently. But could she truly trust it? Laura's heart raced. "We need to take the chance. On 3. 1, 2. Before she could finish, the ground underneath them trembled violently, splitting open, revealing an endless abyss that seemed to reach for their souls. "Mom!" Emma screamed. "Hang on!" Laura's mind flooded with conflicting thoughts, and the shadows were closing in again, alive with intent. The light pulsed, beckoning them forward, but unwillingness gnawed at her. And as she fought against the encroaching darkness, a haunting question echoed within her. What lay waiting at the end of that bright path? Every moment felt like a heartbeat away from the unthinkable. Laura took a breath and made her choice. But at what cost? The ground quaked beneath them, sending vibrations of raw fear through Laura's bones. Instinct took over, and she yanked her children closer, stumbling backward, heart racing. The abyss loomed wider, a hungry mouth ready to swallow them whole. "No, we can't fall!" Panic pulsed through her chest like a second heartbeat. "Mommy!" Emma cried, her small hands gripping Laura's jacket as if it were the only tether to sanity in a storm of madness. "Hold on, don't let go!" Laura shouted, fighting against the pull of the void. The light shimmered in the distance, an ethereal glow that felt almost alive, yet unreal. The shadows screamed around them, their whispers intensifying as the ground quivered even more violently. "Laura." The voice rippled through the air, soft and inviting, drowning the chaos in a dangerous lull. It was Mark's voice, sweet like honey, yet laced with a sinister edge that made Laura's skin crawl. "Don't listen," she hollered. "Keep running." They moved as one, 3 bodies close together, bolstered by adrenaline alone. As they surged toward the light, the shadows drew back in feigned retreat, but their laughter, oh, that awful laughter, still echoed in her ears, threading through the silence like a dark melody. "Mom, what is that?" Jake gasped, pointing at a writhing snake of darkness creeping up from the abyss. It's just a trick, Laura shouted, forcing her feet to move faster. We can make it! But the light felt further away now. Every step was a struggle against sinking mud. Suddenly, fingers of shadow reached out, brushing against her legs, their touch icy and unnatural. Laura screamed, swinging her arms wildly as they clawed at her, trying to drag her back into the endless dark. Mom! Emma shrieked, her voice rising in terror as the shadows closed in on them. Stay close, Laura shouted, gritting her teeth as she fought the encroaching horror. The whispering shadows jerked Jake up, and he yelped as they began pulling him toward the gaping maw. A spectral hand seemed to shimmer in and out of view, reaching for him as if it could snatch away his very essence. Let him go, Laura roared, summoning every ounce of love and fury. She lunged, wrapping her fingers around Jake's arm and yanking him back with all her strength. He landed hard against her side, eyes wide, filled with both faith and fear. Suddenly, the ground beneath them howled, and the churning abyss began to swell, a grotesque roar swallowing the forest's silence. It was no longer just a pit. It was a devouring monster, eager to consume their very souls. Run, run now! She felt desperate and defeated, but urgency propelled her forward. The light flickered, a dying ember against the onslaught of darkness. But with every step, the shadows surged, relentless, swirling like a storm around them. You can't escape, they taunted with voices overlapping, each a twisted echo of who they used to be. Panic seized Laura as she took a glimmering breath and surged forward. She felt the presence of something spectral brushing against her thoughts, memories of happy moments blending with despair. The light pulsed again, brighter, more secure. Could it be salvation? Or were they racing toward something far worse? Her heart thudded in her chest, uncertainty curdling the hope within. Mom, it's too late, Emma cried. It's right behind us. The shadows lunged forth, an unholy tide yanking at her limbs. If she could just reach the light, if they could just escape. With one last surge of determination, Laura gritted her teeth, foot after foot, inching toward salvation or doom. Then the light flickered one last time and it shimmered out, plunging them into dark chaos. Mom! Their voices echoed around her, swallowed by the deep. With the shadows collapsing in from every side, Laura realized she could no longer see her children. Panic blooming like wildfire, she whipped around, desperately trying to locate them. Where are you? She shrieked, feeling the familiar chill creeping into her bones. Was the abyss claiming them? Or had something worse come to play? And just as the darkness threatened to fully engulf her, she felt a hand slip into hers, a small, trembling hand. Jake? Panic clawed at her voice as the shadows twisted tighter around her. She waited, breath held, knowing they had only moments before. Something. What spell would the darkness weave now? And what price would she have to pay to save her children? The shadows seemed to whisper back in unison. Your fate is already written. The silence was deafening, stretching out into the void. Laura's heart beat against her ribcage like a frantic drum, and for a moment, the claustrophobic darkness felt like it was pressing in, wrapping around her like a shroud. The cold seeped into her bones, solidifying her fear, and drowning her in a sea of despair. Jake, she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. She squeezed the tiny hand in hers, praying it was her son and not a cruel, deceiving shadow. It trembled and she held on tighter, feeling its warmth fighting against the encroaching chill. Mom, the voice was soft, too soft. What do we do? Laura's throat tightened. Just ahead she thought she could see something moving, the silhouette of a figure shifting and flickering in and out like a dying light bulb. It felt wrong, twisted, like staring at a funhouse mirror that mocked her. No, no, she forced herself to say. We have to keep moving. The shadows were ravenous, ready to pounce as if sensing her wavering resolve. Where's Emma? Jake's question cut through the air like a knife, sharp and distressing. Emma? She cried, her voice cracking. The name echoed, fading into a muted whisper. There was no answer. Fear zipped through her like a live wire, igniting her senses. Behind them, the abyss was alive, a rolling dark mass, sucking air and hope from her lungs. She couldn't look, couldn't dwell on what was coming. "We have to find her," she shouted, swallowing hard, fighting against the despair creeping up her back. The shadows recoiled. A pulse of frantic energy surged through the air. "You think you can outrun us?" they hissed, their voices taunting and dripping with malice, as the laughter grew louder, an ethereal melody that raised goosebumps on her skin. The darkness split abruptly, forming an apparition, a vision of Emma standing just beyond, her eyes wide and glassy, flickering like the shadows around them. "Mommy," she called, but it was distorted, a ghostly echo that twisted the air. It felt wrong. "No," Laura screamed. "It's not her." She yanked Jake, pulling him close, their backs pressed against the weight of fading hope. The warmth of his small body grounded her even as the world around them began to tremble again. "Mommy, I can see you." Emma's sweet voice lilted in the air again, but it made Laura's blood run cold. "Come to me." Jake's grip tightened around her hand. "She isn't real," he hissed, his youthful face twisted in fear. "I don't want to go." And there they were, a choice looming in the dark, to risk everything for a flickering promise of salvation, or to fight against the impending shadow. Laura's mind raced. She felt the shadows pulse, twisting around her thoughts, seeping into the edges of reality. With a surge of desperation, she bellowed, "No, we won't give in to you." The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of rage and despair swirling around her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting, watching behind the veil of darkness, ready to strike. "Mommy!" Emma cried again, her voice high and terrified. "Don't listen!" Laura shouted, firm in her resolve. "We go forward, we fight!" But just as she took a shaky step, a figure burst forth from the depths. It was a pitiful sight, a woman tangled in shadows, her eyes blackened, mouth agape in a silent scream. "Help! Me!" The figure rasped, reaching towards them, and the darkness around her writhed and thrashed. No! It was the ultimate deception, a lure. Laura felt the ground shudder violently beneath her again, and the specter's gaze seemed to draw her in. "Mom, what do we do?" Jake's voice, shaky and small, tethered her back. She could feel it now, the darkness stretching claw-like toward them, hungry. Would the shadows consume them if they looked back one more time? Were they trapped, circling in an endless nightmare? Or was there a chance of escape hidden in the folds of fear? Together they stood, hearts pounding, a fragile hope flickering. But as the figure started to crawl closer, its lips forming wordless pleas, Laura felt the cold tightening around her heart. "The shadows are lying!" she shouted, but doubt bubbled beneath the surface. What if she was wrong? What if they were here forever? With every ounce of will, she pushed forward, not toward the frantic whispers or haunting cries. But could she protect her children from the price that the darkness demanded? Darkness thrummed around them, eager, reaching. And just as they stepped into the encroaching black, an eerie voice murmured, "Your fate is bound to our world." Could they truly defy the abyss? Or would they be lost forever in the territories of despair? A sudden vapor of ice-cold air swirled around them, chilling Laura to the bone as she tightened her grip on Jake's small hand. They pushed further into the dark, driven by the flickering hope of finding Emma. The shadows moved like serpents at their backs, ever hungry and ominous, feeding off their fear. "Stay close," Laura whispered, the words trembling in her throat. She could barely contain the dread pooling in her stomach as the figure of the woman vanished, swallowed whole by the darkness. A rattling breath came from Jake, and she pulled him in closer, feeling his tiny body quaking against hers. "Mom, what if—" His question hung heavy in the air, the "if" amplifying their fears. "Just don't look back, okay?" She forced a confident tone. "We'll find a way out. We must keep going." Yet, as they moved deeper, the shadows shifted and writhed, warping the space around them. The air thickened, like wading through water, pressing against their bodies with every shaky step. The laughter returned, more mocking, echoing like taunts inside the pit of her stomach. "Help me, you'll be happier." The whispers slithered. Don't you want to be with her? Mommy, a voice echoed, fractured and deceptive. It was Emma, but distorted, as if tainted by the darkness itself. Stop it! Laura shouted, her voice ringing with desperation. You're not real! But doubt crept in, gnawing at her resolve. Jake's trembling intensified. Mom, I hear her. What if she's really here? A churning sense of betrayal filled her chest. No, it's trying to trick us. Keep moving. And then, without warning, the earth convulsed underfoot, like an animal in pain. They stumbled as a wave of darkness rippled outward, clawing at their legs, an intangible force trying to drag them into the depths. Run! Laura shouted, pulling Jake along, their feet pounding against the aged ground. With every stride, the figures morphed in the periphery. Eyes peeked from the corners of the shadows, watching, waiting. Whispers filled the air, rising and falling like tiny knives piercing her resolve, cold and sharp. A suffocating dread settled over them, and just as she thought they might be breaking free, something lashed out. A tendril of darkness snaked around Jake's ankle, pulling him down. Mom! He screamed, panic stripping his voice, his eyes wide, terror streaked. No! Laura lunged, but the shadows were quicker, pulling him into the dark. Jake! She grabbed for him, but the shadows erupted around her, forming a wall that sealed tight. Leave him! The shadows hissed, each word dripping malice like poison. Join us, or lose all you love. No! She screamed, her heart hammering against her ribs, raw and bleeding. She twisted, fought against the onslaught of darkness, clawing at it, spitting defiance. But as she struggled, the shadows retreated for a moment, and a figure emerged again. Emma, her little form glimmering like a beacon. Mommy, please, I need you! Laura's breath hitched. The voice was real. It called to her heart. She felt the pull, the longing to reach out. Emma, I'm here. Yet the moment was fraught with uncertainty. Was this truly her child, or another snare set by the shadows to entangle her in despair? Mom! Jake's desperate voice broke through the noise, just beyond the reach of her hand. No! Panic surged, boiling inside her as she wrestled with the choice. Could she trust her instincts, or would looking back seal their fates? Every heartbeat screamed for action. Laura squinted into the darkness, looking back, her breath shallow, fear curdling in her gut. As the two figures flickered, blending into a swarm of shadows, a primal scream echoed through her mind. You must choose. Could Laura strip away the layers of deceit? Was she stronger than the abyss? As she made her decision, the ground beneath shifted again, and she felt herself tipping into the void. The darkness roared. Your fate is sealed. What awaited them next? Would she slip into hopelessness, or could she break free of the sinister grip forever? Laura's heart raced, a wild drumbeat echoing in her ears. She felt the world around her fade, the shadows closing in, their breath a cold whisper across her skin. Was this the end? No. The thought ignited a fire in her bones. She couldn't let the darkness win. Not now. Not when Jake needed her. With a fierce shout, she twisted away from the pull of the shadows, forcing her legs to move like lead through the oppressive air. I won't give up, she shouted, as if the very act of saying it would solidify her resolve. But the dark had other plans. Tendrils lashed out again, striking her legs. Zapping sensations coursed through her, the cold leeching warmth, but she stumbled forward, driven by a primal instinct to protect her son. She could not fail. Mommy, Jake cried, his voice muffled, swallowed by the clamoring darkness. She could still hear him. That was a sliver of hope. Jake, I'm coming. As she ran, the shadows danced in her peripheral vision, grotesque faces appearing for fleeting moments, taunting her with familiar features twisted in horror. She gasped, her breath hitching as one shadow morphed into Emma's face, twisted and pale, eyes wide with terror. Help me, it echoed, the voice crawling under her skin, igniting her anguish. No, Laura screamed, shaking her head free of the haunting image. You're not real. But the shadows were relentless. They twisted her memories, each painful moment amplified, each fear laid bare. They fed on her hesitation. Just give in, they hissed, growing louder, a cacophony that battered at her resolve. "Stop!" Laura shouted. She would not let them break her. With rage coursing through her, she lunged deeper into the darkness, past the clutches of the grasping shadows. Then, an opening appeared. A faint glimmer drew her in, a sliver of light sparkling like a star against the abyss. Hope surged through her veins as she sprinted toward it, desperate to reach Jake, desperate to escape the clutches of despair. "Jake, keep calling for me. I'll find you." "Mom." His voice struggled to rise above the swelling darkness, and Laura closed her eyes, picturing his sweet face. Jake was strong. They were strong together. The light flickered again, growing closer, more defined. Flickers of memories danced in her mind, laughing at the park, playing in the backyard, their sweet Saturday mornings spent together. Could those memories help her escape? Would they form a bridge back to her son? Suddenly the ground shuddered violently beneath her. Laura stumbled, barely holding her footing. A ghastly growl reverberated through the air, primal and unholy. The shadows roared back, furious at her resistance, slashing at her, trying to knock her into the dark. She gritted her teeth and pushed through, tears streaming down her cheeks as she called Jake's name, the light pulsing with every syllable. But just as she felt she might reach the light, something icy wrapped around her heart, squeezing hard. The shadows whispered again, more urgently, "You cannot escape this place. You are ours now." In that moment, Laura knew the truth. The shadows were feeding off her doubt and dread. The real fight lay within her, the power to believe in hope. And then, a scream pierced through the chaos, rich with terror and desperation. "Mom, they're taking me." The world around her darkened once more, dimming the silver glow she sought. But she clung to it fiercely, knowing she could not let fear win. With renewed strength, she pierced through the darkness one last time. She lunged towards the light, a last desperate reach, pouring all her love and fear into that singular moment of hope. But when she broke the boundary, she was met with the stark, chilling realization. The glow was but an illusion. "Laura," a gentle voice beckoned, dripping like syrup. "Join us in the end." And there the walls of her conviction started to crumble. As darkness threatened to engulf her once more, Laura braced for what was to come, knowing that her next steps would determine everything. Would she stand her ground and fight, or would she fall into the trap of despair set by the shadows? All she could hear now was a heartbeat, her own, thumping against the impending doom. What waited in the depths of the dark? Would she find Jake, or had she taken a step further from the light than she could ever return? The moment Laura entered the blinding glow, hope flickered like a dying flame. The warm embrace of light faded, replaced by a chilling cold that wrapped around her throat. "This isn't real," she gasped, pulling at the shadows that clawed at her ankles. Each tug felt like a battle against quicksand, an unwinnable struggle that threatened to pull her down into a whirlpool of despair. "Mommy!" Jake screamed again, his voice slicing through the darkness. Panic surged wildly in her chest. She pressed forward, heartbeat hammering in her ears. Each step thudded heavily as if the ground yearned to swallow her whole. But the light was transforming. No longer comforting, it bled an eerie shade, a fluorescent green that twisted the world around her. The ground beneath her feet rippled like disturbed water, silent wails echoing beneath, chilling her to the bone. "Keep calling for me, Jake," she pleaded, though the shadow's whispers entwined with her thoughts. "You'll never find him. Leave this behind." Desperation pushed her through the haze. "I'm here, I won't stop," she called, heart racing as she sank deeper into the suffocating mist. A window of time seemed to stretch into eternity. Shadows morphed into menacing shapes, teasing her with glimpses of her past. Emma's laughter, fleeting images of family dinners, and an old dog wagging its tail. Each moment, once warm, now wormed its way into her mind, taunting her with the certainty of loss. Suddenly, silence fell. The screams faded. The whispering darkness quieted to a sigh. In the absence of noise, she heard it. The whisper of her own name, stretched thin, fragile against the void. "Laura!" She spun around, breaths shallow. "Who's there?" she demanded, keeping her voice steady. "Join us!" The voice lured, sweet and syrupy, oozing with sinister intent. "Never!" she shouted, refusing to obey the seductive tone weaving through the air. She shifted, scanning her surroundings, searching for Jake. The oppressive aura weighed heavy, squeezing her heart like a vice. She caught sight of movement, a flicker, a shadow on the edge of her vision. "Jake?" She pressed her hands to her temples, blocking the echoes clawing at her mind. The darkness shifted more violently now, swirling in a riot of despair. Then she saw him, a small figure crouched behind the trees at the edge of the light. Jake! Relief surged through her, almost intoxicating, yet it was quickly crushed by the realization. The shadows coiled around him, dark tendrils wrapping like serpents, pulling him further into the gloom. "Mommy!" Jake's eyes shone bright with terror, full of the innocent trust that made her heart ache. She darted forward, arms outstretched, ready to grasp him. But as she dove toward him, the shadows exploded with fury. "You cannot have him!" they screeched, a cacophony of voices, rising higher and higher until the sound cracked through her thoughts. With each step backward, the shadows summoned tortured souls. They manifested within her mind, faces of those she had lost. Friends turned to nightmares, garbed in sorrow. She stumbled, almost blinded by the sheer weight of their grief. "No, I can't let you take him." A blinding light flashed behind her eyes and she felt it. The pulse of a heartbeat that was not her own, rhythmically pounding. Was it Jake's? Or was it the darkness breathing in tandem with her despair? "Can't you hear?" a voice rasped, now solidified in the shadows, grating against the calm. "Only one of you can escape." Gritting her teeth, Laura's resolve returned, burning with righteous fire. "You're wrong," she cried. "You can't have him. I'll fight. I'll fight until my last breath." Yet, as she plunged into the shadows once more, she felt the world shifting beneath her. The ground trembled and shook, the darkness laughing, vibrant and cold. Just as she reached for Jake, an unearthly howl echoed, reverberating through the air. And then the world tilted. She gasped as she found herself falling, not toward Jake, but into a deeper, darker abyss. What happens next, she wondered as the weight of nothingness wrapped around her, pulling her deeper into the unknown. Would she ever reclaim her son? Or had she sealed their fates together in this torment? As everything faded, a question lingered, held precariously in the silence. What lay at the end of the darkness? Laura drifted in the void, suspended between hope and despair. The emptiness was heavy, like a thick fog suffocating her spirit. She could still hear Jake's terrified voice echo in her mind, bouncing off the walls of her darkest nightmares. "Mommy, they're taking me." With a sudden surge of clarity, Laura's eyes shot open. The oppressive darkness slipped away, revealing the distorted landscape of the cursed woods. Shadows writhed around her like a living nightmare, taunting and beckoning her into their depths. "You're too late," they whispered, their voices slithering closer, mingling with her fear. "No," she shouted, her heart pounding violently in her chest. Focus, she had to find Jake. In those dark moments, as panic clawed at her throat, a model of determination took shape within her. "I have to push through. I will find him." She steadied her breath, and the oppressive weight of doubt began to lift. Gathering every ounce of courage she had, Laura pressed forward, fighting against the writhing shadows that sought to bind her in despair. "Hold on, Jake, I'm coming," she cried, arms outstretched and eyes darting for any sign of her son. And just like that, the woods began to shift. The trees twisted and contorted, opening a path dimly illuminated by an ethereal glow. Laura bolted through the opening, the shadows hissing behind her. The distant cry of a child pierced through the chilling silence and urged her on, a beacon guiding her toward her lost boy. "Jake!" she screamed, each breath burning with purpose. With every desperate call, the shadows flinched, recoiling as her resolve hardened. An opening appeared, revealing Jake trapped amid the roots of a monstrous tree, tendrils of darkness wrapping around him, pulling him deeper into the abyss. No, I won't let you take him. Laura charged forward, heart pounding as she ripped the shadows away. Jake, I'm here. She plunged into the chaos, ripping at the darkness with shaking hands, fear transforming into raw fury. Mommy! Jake cried, his small voice trembling, eyes wide with terror. The shadows tightened around him, their whispers echoing, a wicked melody promising their eternal bond. Help me. I'm getting you out, she yelled, rage fueling her strength. With one final push, she tore the shadowed tendrils away, and Jake fell into her arms, his small body trembling against hers, warmth washing back into her heart. We did it. We're together, she gasped, wrapping him tight, the shadows closing in like a ravenous beast. But as Laura turned to run, she saw the figure loomed at the edge of their escape. A spectral version of Mark, eyes hollow and voice haunting. Laura, come home, it beckoned, a sinister grin stretching wide, mocking everything they had fought against. Don't listen, she shouted, dragging Jake behind her as they fled toward the swirling ethereal light that pulsed in the distance. We're not going with you. The darkness hissed angrily, swarming around them. Tendrils snapped at their heels like snapping dogs, but they pressed on, hearts pounding as the light drew closer. Suddenly the path erupted in a deafening roar, shattering the stillness of the woods. You think you can escape? You belong to us. Shadows lashed out, closing in with a vengeance. Don't look back, Laura shouted wildly, their hope mingling with fear, feeding her resolve. They were almost there. She could taste the freedom just beyond their reach. In a single burst of energy, they lunged toward the light, breaking free from the intoxicating grip of the shadows. And as they crossed into the brilliance, the darkness receded with a final, anguished howl, a wail of lost souls that echoed through the clearing. Laura blinked as the world shifted again, and the three of them stood in the warmth of sunlight. Timber Hollow was painted in golden hues, flowers blooming and birds singing. Familiar laughter danced on the wind, their laughter. No more shadows, she breathed, holding her children close, heart racing. They were safe, the weight of nightmare lifted. Mom? Jake's voice sounded small, quivering with uncertainty. It's okay, sweetheart, Laura whispered, her heart swelling with love. We're home. Behind them the shadows faded into whispers, lingering in the corners of her mind, but they were no longer in control. Laura had faced the darkness and emerged with her family, and nothing would ever take them from her again. As they walked back toward their car, the fears of the past evaporated like mist. Hand in hand, they prepared to leave the woods behind forever, knowing they had triumphed over the dark. The shadows might have shown them despair, but light always found its way back. As their laughter filled the air, Laura couldn't shake the sensation of something watching them, lingering in the hushed whispers of the pines. But for now, they were free. Thank you for joining us on this chilling adventure. If you want more spine-tingling tales that pull at your heartstrings and keep you on the edge of your seat, you need to subscribe immediately. Smash that like button now to give us the boost we need and feed the algorithm. Let's keep the horror coming. Flood the comments section with your reactions and your theories about what happens next. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who love a good thrill. It's time to support the channel. Only true fans can show that love through these actions. Let's keep the tales alive.